he, the Savior, say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. Jesus paid it all. To him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Lord, now indeed I find thy power and thine alone came and changed the leper's spots, and it melt the heart of stone. Jesus paid it all. To him I owe. White as snow. And when before the throne I stand in him complete, Jesus died my soul to save. My lips shall still repeat, Jesus paid it all. To him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain. He washed it white as snow. Oh, that sees it so clear. He washed it white as snow.
Welcome back to Abotelo Television. I would like to take this time to welcome you back again to our afternoon service. This afternoon service, we begin this services by our youth corner. Youth corner on standby. We've got Mr. Mumpuluki Luruma Mogobi le gore ke ruta re le banana ka dikgang tsa kgwebo jalo. Re Mogobi ke tsa gore wa nkuta sebaka jaanong ke sa gago.
Okay. Hello, Dumelang Banana. This is the third occasion I've been invited to come and speak to you. Sorry. This is the third occasion I've been asked to speak to you. Coming to you again from Mogobe Plaza. I've just come out of the Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom. I was interviewing 4 entrepreneurs today. It was very exciting. I don't know what happened with technology. We got delayed to join you. But it's always a delight. Because there's no time, I've only got minutes. I'm going to avoid the scripture portion. I won't be reading much scripture. I want to go straight to the to the message which are for you for today. It has to do with the 3 reasons or 3 habits to adopt to live a more fulfilled life. 3 habits to adopt in order to live a more fulfilling life. And if you look at all the matriarchs and the patriarchs in the Bible, you'll find to a great extent that some of these habits have been adopted by them. It is quite interesting to observe the absurdity of the rationality and the absurdity of human behavior sometimes. One particular behavior that comes to mind is the tendency for us to, or the proclivity of human beings to come up with long lists, or to-do lists. And especially around the beginning of the year, we always set ourselves new targets or new things to do. um, for the year, but somehow, somewhere, somehow, the majority of us fail to do those things. The reason for that is a thing called the snapback effect, the tendency to snap back to your original behavior after a while. And psychologists have analyzed this problem. And for you as youngsters, I think you should just take your time to look at these things that cause you to fail to do your objectives and to do what you set out to do. After a camp meeting like this, you'll have been motivated by a lot of speakers. Some of what I shared with you will have moved you, some of you, and you'll want to change perhaps the way that you conduct yourselves and you want to improve. So I want to just show you the three habits. There are many habits, but there are three habits which, if you can master these three habits as a Christian, as a believer, but more importantly, for my purposes, as an entrepreneur, you will win in whatever you do. Remember, my first message was winners never quit and quitters never win. My second message was to interpret the dream of Joseph and the real entrepreneurial standpoint of setting aside 1/5 of the produce. Today, I'm going to talk about these three habits. Although it may sound obvious, I find it extremely helpful to break concepts down to the fundamentals, because it helps for you to develop a clear perspective. The first question one must ask oneself is, what is a habit? New York Times bestseller author by the name of Charles Dung defines a habit as a choice over, time, which morphs into an unconscious pattern. An important point to put forward is in the book is that all habits are essentially structured the same way, as in the habit loop. What psychologists have found, and what I've also found, is that there's a habit loop between trigger, routine, and reward. Trigger, routine, and reward. There's something that triggers a particular habit, and then it becomes a routine which you repeat, and then there's a reward at the end. So the challenge to develop, if it's a bad habit, is to break this loop. If it is a good habit, the challenge is to develop and to entrench this habit that you may have developed. So now that we've understood what habits are and how they work, let us now delve into the three habits that I've, I've, I've found to be at the center of behavior. Um, so, first, uh, let me point out that we live in a very superficial society. With the advent of social media, individuals can exhibit ignorance, and sometimes social media allows people to pride themselves in their own ignorance. So, most people want to start a business, master a craft, or change the world, but few understand the mindset involved in changing the world. And although there are many articles and many podcasts and many books that talk about this, they don't really talk at the heart of this thing. But what we found is that the important thing is, to change a habit is to absorb a huge amount of information. That's number one. So if you want to make a change and you want to change behavior, the important thing is to absorb a gargantuan, there's a word for it, a gargantuan amount of information, which means a monstrous quantity of information about a particular thing or a particular behavior that you want to, a particular habit that you want to form, or if it's an industry, you have to absorb as much as you can so that you become an industry expert. So reading, going to the internet to absorb information through podcasts, and internalizing information in your area that you've chosen is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. I was speaking to a group the other time at BAC, and this is the same talk that I'm giving to you. I also gave to a group at UB, but they said that the message that I shared with them was so impactful as a result of hearing this message, they then reconsidered their behavior, and some of them were telling me that they actually changed it. So the first thing is that you must read. It doesn't matter who you admire in the Bible, whether it is King Solomon or King David, and a lot of scholars and the prophets. They were good at one thing. They were scholars and they read. And whether your models or your role models are outside the Bible, is the golden message or the golden saying is that leaders are readers. Readers are leaders, leaders are readers. So you have to be reading. So this is one habit that you have to cultivate if you are going to change going forward, especially after attending a camp meeting like this, after being motivated like this. Get into the habit of reading. Internalize information through repetitively absorbing content as a habit. I, for instance, set aside 2 hours every morning to reading, and I put it towards reading and absorbing content that is relevant to my area of entrepreneurship. The other thing that habit that you have to develop is to put yourself in very uncomfortable situations. Do not be afraid to try something new. The story of David in the Bible, when he convinced Saul to take on Goliath, you remember that the thing that he mentioned was that he had taken on a lion and he had taken on a bear. And it was only then that Saul was persuaded, because it was clear to Saul that David was comfortable in discomfort. So be comfortable in discomfort and get used to getting yourself in comfortable situations. This is a habit that is even a habit that is found in other religions and other faiths. If you go to it's not a faith, but it's a way of thinking called stoicism. That is the idea of that was adopted by such philosophers as Seneca, and an idea that was adopted by such emperors as Emperor um, Emperor Aurelius. Yes, I think that's the name. And these chaps were called Stoics because they had a particular way of thinking. And even more recently, a renowned psychologist by the name of Jordan Peterson, and I've read his books, and he's very prevalent on social media. He explains in his podcast, and in a podcast, that the novel situations induce a substrata of advantages most people are not even aware of. One advantage, he simply puts it, is that there is new evidence that points out towards the fact that novel situations or new situations actually stimulate your genes to code for new proteins that build new neural structures that are completely new. In other words, the more you throw yourself into uncomfortable positions, the more, what the psychologists are telling us, the more you develop your brain to now develop new neural pathways or new systems of thinking that help you deal with those new situations. You'll never discover you'll never discover the power of your brain to deal with new and complex situations unless you throw yourself into those situations. For instance, 3 years ago, I knew nothing about cooking. I knew nothing about running a restaurant, but I consciously threw myself into the discomfort of learning about restaurants and opening 2 restaurants and then learning everything there was to learn about restaurants. The same thing is, you have to be deliberate and you have to be very, very extreme in the amount of information you absorb in your new area. The third habit that you have to cultivate may seem like a simplistic one. That one is one of exercise, physical exercise. And yes, most people, when you talk about exercise, they think of it in terms of fitness, in terms of staying fit. There's another reason why you need to exercise. What we are discovering, and what they've discovered way back in the 19th century, a certain philosopher by the name of Soren Kierkegaard, he discovered that the mind and body connection is so intricate. There's such an intricate connection between the mind, that this connection is such that most people are not aware. that this connection actually guarantees success. It's very rare to find a successful businessman who's not physically active, who is not, uh, who does not engage the body in a lot of activity. There's even an American physician by the name of Alexander Lowen who explains that exercise helps to shape character, and it helps one to act with the natural aggression that life requires. I bet you didn't know that life requires natural aggression. But let me give you a few examples. When Paul was defending himself in those three judgments, one of which included Agrippa, he had to be very aggressive in making the argument from a court stand. He had to be naturally aggressive and forceful in arguing that he was a Roman citizen and entitled to certain rights. He was not just meek and saying, they've got me, what can I do? If it's my time, it's my time. He had to work with that natural aggression. I've already given you the example of David. David had to be aggressive. He definitely had to be aggressive in all the situations that he dealt with, whether it's a bear, whether it's a lion, whether it's a Goliath, whether it's becoming a warrior king. He needed to have a certain amount of aggression in the way that he approached things. So you need to have a, a, a certain amount of, maybe aggression is a strong word, maybe let me say assertiveness. You have to be assertive, and that requires physical activity. You're required to have a certain amount of fitness. If you let your body go, and if you are not physically fit, automatically that translates to your mind as well. So, while there are numerous more habits that I could talk about, which are very, very important in terms of your success journey, these are the three habits that, in my judgment, are very, very necessary for you to be successful, for you to make a difference. So, just to summarize, the three success habits that you have to develop is the habit of reading, and that one I'm sure I cannot emphasize more strongly, because I was only able to change my financial circumstances from being a lawyer, no, from being a lawyer through the habit of reading. Thankfully for me, I had developed the habit of reading from reading law books. But this time around, I was getting into the habit of reading. There's a bit of noise here. If I can move to another spot, getting to the habit of reading impactful books, success-oriented books that made a difference in terms of made a difference to my bottom line. So you have to engage in a personal development journey. You have to be deliberate, and you have to uh, read endlessly. There used to be this habit, I don't know whether it is still among successful people, especially the ones who have degrees, to limit their knowledge only to their fields of study, often to limit it to maybe a dissertation that you would have done for your master's if you've done your master's, or to your degree. Limit yourself to your degree, and after you get that degree, no more reading, no more self-development, no more personal development. So I'm saying to you, the most important habit for success is reading. There's a gentleman by the name of Warren Buffett, who's a very successful investor. He says he spends 6 to 8 hours reading every single day. I'm not as extreme as Warren Buffett. I spend only 2 hours reading. And I think you need to have a minimum that you are comfortable with for your purposes, and read and learn, read and learn. And then I've also mentioned that you have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions. I gave the example of David. He constantly put himself in very, very uncomfortable positions. If you look at every successful person, let's look at Esther. We would not remember Esther if Esther had not listened to Mordecai to put herself in an extremely uncomfortable and dangerous position to go and be with the king at the threat of death. And that way she was able to fulfill her purpose and to save the Jews. Similarly, even though you are talking about success in terms of entrepreneurship, success in terms of surviving COVID, and obviously success in terms of developing your career, success in any form, I would submit, requires putting yourself in discomfort. and in uncomfortable position. And lastly, exercise. And I've already explained the importance of physical exercise and physical fitness. So that is basically my message for you, dear youth. I hope that you've benefited from what I have to share with you. But let me all put it all together that the first day I was focused on winners never quitting and quitters never winning. So it's important that you never quit in your endeavors. You must, to be successful, you must have that mindset. Once you've started something, you must see it through. You must see it through to its conclusion. They say that a lot of people quit when they are 70% of the way or 90% of the way. So it's important you only quit when you've won. Number two, I focused on the second day on the story of Joseph. The idea of creating momentum in your life is based on you putting aside 20% of your income or 20% of everything you make as a minimum. And I even emphasize that you can go higher if you want, but you can never, ever, ever, ever be successful if you don't keep a portion of what you make. If you're the kind of guy or woman who blows everything that they make, I can tell you without any hesitancy that you're going to fail and you'll never succeed. Number three, these are the three key habits. One, exercise. I'm reading them in the reverse, in comfort or uncomfortable situations all the time. And number three, and most importantly, reading, the habit of reading. Readers are leaders, readers are learners, readers are difference makers, readers are influencers. Thank you very much. That is my message over the last 3 days. And I'm sharing these messages because they are the things that I practice every single day of my life. I practice these things, and I'm not talking about ifs and buts or maybes. I'm talking reality based on my personal life. That is my message for this afternoon. That is my message for the last 3 days. I hope you've been enriched. I do pray that you've benefited in one way or the other from what I've had to share. Thank you very much indeed. Bless you. And in every way, may God protect you from this deadly and vicious pandemic.
Bakaulingwe, Abotshelo TV, ke yone thapo e le gore e golaganya le godimo le lehatsi, e golaganya modimo le batho, gore ka yone re kgona go utlwa mahoko a tsholohetso, mahoko a khomotso, mahoko a le gore mo se mo sa mo go tsone sena a re thusa gore itse gore modimo o teng. Jaanong sa Botswana conference e dirile thulaganyo e ditsala gore ka yone phutego e kgone gore e tswelle e obama e tswelle e ntse e le mo kopa mo ka tselentseng jalo re lopa jalo gore a re diriseng tshono ena go obama ka Abotshelo TV ra le bona le ba botsepa ba o mamela.
Hosted by Botswana TV, Mr. Haneka Monad.
You are so special. You are not just like. You must be serious with yourself. This is the God who created the heavens and the earth. He is so serious with you.
botshelo thapo e golaganya metagana ya maranyane mo segompieno kgwedi ya Phatwe re ka be re le ko metaganeng re ikakolela dikgolo tse di diragalang teng mme ka modimo a le mogolo a dira gore go nne le maranyane gore tle re kgone go bona dithero moopelo kgothatso le tse dingwe hela tse di monate tse dintsintsi tse di diragalang ko metaganeng.
Thank you so much for staying with us. This is Botshelo Television. We're broadcasting live here in Mogoditane. We'd like to take this time to thank Mr. Mumpuluki Luruma Mukhube for such powerful presentation. Right now, we're getting into children's program. Don't go anywhere. We are coming right back after this.
Botshelo thapo e golaganya metagana ya maranyane mo segompieno kgwedi ya Phatwe re ka be re le ko metaganeng re ikakolela dikgolo tse di diragalang teng mme ka modimo a le mogolo a dira gore go nne le maranyane gore tle re kgone go bona dithero moopelo kgothatso le tse dingwe hela tse di monate tse dintsintsi tse di diragalang ko metaganeng.